Good evening, members and officers. Welcome to this meeting of the Personnel Committee. I'm Stephen Chard, I'm the clerk of this meeting. The first item of business is to elect a chairman of the committee for the remainder of this municipal year. Do I hear any nominations? Councillor Brooks?
Pleased to propose Councillor Matt Shakespeare.
Thank you. And does that find a seconder?
Sorry, hi. I'm very pleased to second that nomination.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Are there any other nominations? Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll put that proposal to the vote for Councillor Shakespeare to be chairman. All in favour, thank you. And yeah, chairman, over to you.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Good evening. I am the newly elected Councillor Matt Shakespeare, Chairman of the Personnel Committee. I'm joined by the following members: Anthony Amatraj, Jeff Brooks, and Vicky Paul. Also here tonight are officers Paula Goodwin, Olympia Byrne, and Karen Turner, who will be advising us at the meeting this evening. Stephen Chard is the clerk. Clerk, do I address you as clerk or Stephen? Stephen's fine, sorry. Stephen, do we have any apologies for the meeting?
We do, Chairman. So yeah, Councillor Bialoco sent his apologies.
Okay. So I'll move on to item 3, the minutes. Does anybody we need to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 11th September 2023? Could I ask for a proposer for the minutes of that meeting?
Happy to propose, Chairman.
Could I ask for a seconder? Anthony? Could I ask if members will raise their hands if they approve the minutes, please? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 4, declaration of interest. Do any members present have a declaration of interest? No. Thank you. Item 5, update on the HR activity Q1 and Q2, 23-24. Paula, could I ask you to introduce the report, please?
Okay, so this is the HR update report that comes to this committee every 6 months. So this is Q1 and Q2 data that you have in front of you. I will suggest that we go through the paper section by section and take questions after each section, unless there's a preference to go through the whole paper and then ask questions at the end of that. Yeah, okay. So what you have in front of you is an executive summary in section 4, which highlights some of the main themes of the paper, all in positive form. So although we've had an increased number of established posts within the council over the past 5 years, the number of occupied posts have remained flat over this period of time. Voluntary turnover figure has reduced to 12%. KPI is 12%, so that has come down in the past year. There's a reduction in the amount of casework within HR and across the organisation. And we can talk about that in a bit more detail. There's a significant amount of recruitment activity in the current year to date, and obviously beyond the 2 quarters that you've got in front of you, especially within areas, children's and families and social workers, which are hard to fill, and reducing our agency staff arrangement. Sickness absence has reduced to 8.75 days per worker in the current year. So they're the highlights of the paper. In section 5, what you've got is our employment data that we produce, like I say, every 6 months. And at the end of the year, we'll produce a full summary that we'll bring to Personnel Committee. So it gives you an outline of headcount and post FTE and vacant posts. Then you've got in section 6, starters, leavers, and then the turnover figure that I've referred to earlier. And then further turnover information by directorate. The People Directorate remains as one that was split out in late last year, and therefore for the purposes of reporting, this hasn't been split out into children's and adults as yet, and that will happen in the next financial year. And then you've got more detail about starters and leavers in the organisation, and then a bit more about turnover. So before I move on to talent attraction, does anybody have any questions in relation to the data in section 6?
Vicky?
Thank you, Chair. Paula, it looks to be a fantastic report, and it seems to be very high level numbers. I'd be interested to understand any of the feedback from why people are leaving, and if there are any particular trends. Also, I noticed that within the report, it doesn't say, excuse me, it doesn't mention the longevity of the staff. And if staff are leaving due to an unhappy workplace, for example, not that I would suspect that would be the case, but it would be interesting to understand if there are any departments or areas within the council that experience a high turnover that may be affecting numbers.
Okay, so in terms of reasons for people leaving, so we do offer people the opportunity to have an exit interview and exit and complete exit questionnaires. That's not something that happens as readily as we would like, and that's something that we will be promoting more going forward with our HR business partners. Reasons vary in terms of the data that we do have, and generally that is for promotion activity. Certainly pay isn't an aspect of that. It is people wanting more opportunities elsewhere, but something that we want to improve the quality of our data to make sure that we've got more and focus on retaining people as well as people leaving the organisation. In terms of longevity, I mean, the figures aren't within this report. The average length of service that we have for our employees is about 8 years. And that hasn't changed over the last couple of years. But again, you know, that's something that we could produce and have a look at those periods of time where people, you know, look at each year and the volume of people that are leaving in those age categories as well. Like I say, it's not something we produce for this report, but certainly something we could look to produce going forward. Was that all the questions? Was there another question that I missed? Okay, thank
Councillor
you.
Brooks.
There are a lot of encouraging things in this report, and well done on that. In terms of people leaving, I think you're doing some work already on those who leave the organisation within 12 months of joining. So that stickiness needs to be analysed. I think also on the exit interviews, you know, I've been talking to you about HR being a part of the exit interview process. We've got more work to do on that in terms of capacity. But if we've got 30 odd people leaving a month, we need to do our best to give them a safe space to be able to talk to HR, I feel, rather than talk to perhaps the line management. And you may get a richer, more open feedback process then, and you can do a bit more analysis on that. So that's I think, a way forward. I want to talk about EVP later, but you may not want to take it here. Generally, these indicators going in the right direction, and we know we need to record that because it is, you know, we're quick to complain and we should be and criticise, and we should be quick to acknowledge. What I do see, and it's not within personnel, HR's ambit to actually, manage this, but given our financial strictures, we continue to increase the complement of headcount. If you look at employment data on page 12, section 5, from 2018-19, headcount has gone up to 1539 from 1486. So that's 39, 43, 53 people. Now, is that partly, Paula, we're converting agency workers because there's great work being done on converting agency workers, or is that just a trend we're making? You know, our demands mean we've got to employ more people, hence the financial pressure. Lots of different things there. Let me summarize. EVP, you might not want to take it now, headcount growth, and when might we see under 12-month turnover data? Thank you.
In terms of the higher headcount, some of that will be in relation to the way our data is currently formed and making sure that our data is probably more reflective of where we are. Some of that is temporary arrangements. So we have quite a few temporary arrangements where we have funding in the organisation. So obviously that headcount will take account of temporary headcount as well as permanent headcount. So there definitely has been some additional grants funding arrangements within the organisation that has comprised of some of that. But of course, we can look at that in more detail for future reports. And then the same in terms of the length of service. I think we can add something in terms of the length of service and how that relates to turnover.
Pick it up EVP later.
Yeah, shall we pick up EVP as part of talent? Yeah.
Councillor Raj.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on the vacancies. There's 380 vacancies in FD you've mentioned in the report. I look at the website, West Berkshire website. It says jobs in the end. I necessarily don't agree with that because it should be careers. Because in any professional world, people looking at careers, not jobs as per se. So it is kind of like ambiguous there, but when I go into the details, when I search for all jobs, the all jobs listed are around 25, or I look, I don't know. So is there a disconnect there, or is it just like all the only jobs available there are those listed in the website, and the remaining are kind of like a backup or something like that? So that's the question.
So in terms of the volume of vacancies, we might have one job advert out there for multiple vacancies. So when you talk like social workers, for example, we might have, I'm not saying we do, we might have 50 vacancies, but we would have one rolling advert out there. So it might look like we've got 300 of vacancies. In reality, the vacancies we're advertising are multiple copies, if you like, of those. And then we have rolling adverts out there as well. Not all of those vacancies are true vacancies. So some of them will be temporarily funded using, so that funding for that post will be used to provide temporary arrangements for other staff and other arrangements. So where it says vacant posts, it does not mean there is funding for those posts. So therefore it does not mean it's a true vacancy. And that's some level of data that we need to have a look at in more detail. So our establishment says we have that many vacancies. In reality, it might look like a vacancy, but that budget is being utilised for some other purpose, whether that's temporary arrangements, whether that's cover. And of course, some of that is being covered by agency staff, which is, of course, we want to reduce those numbers going forward. So it's kind of a multiple of different reasons why those vacancies exist. The other thing I would say is a vacancy in terms of showing on the establishment might be 0.001 FTE. So therefore it shows as a vacancy. That's just the way our reporting happens. But in reality, it's a very small proportion of our establishment. So we could have 350 vacancies that are 0.001 FTE. That's just the way the data shows at this moment in time, which I know is unhelpful, but definitely something we want to look at going forward. Sorry, shall I answer your second question, or shall I leave that for EVP actually?
Can I come in on that?
Linked to talent.
Because you wouldn't have 350 vacancies at 0.0001 of FTE, but I don't mind saying, and it's a public meeting, that some of the budget management, Councillor Armitage, is helped by saying there is a vacancy, the person has left, but we're going to leave the vacancy open for 3 months because we're going to cope without that position being filled. And then we'll come back to it later and fill it later. So it's a moving target. It's what we call vacancy factor, and it enables us to manage the budget to a degree. It's not ideal, but it is one of the levers we have to manage our, our straitened budgets. So we're looking at this all the time, aren't we? And there's an exercise going on at the moment, which I think will be done very soon, where we've looked at every open post and said, is that post still going to be recruited to? And some of these open posts have been there for some years. So the world has moved on, but the vacancy, the open post is still there in establishment. So we need to tidy that up as well. So there's a lot of work going on that.
I have a couple of questions. Is that all right? So I think Councillor Brooks already mentioned it, but in section 6.1, the table showing the number of starters, number of leavers in the year for the first 2 quarters, the first half of 23-24, the numbers are incredibly encouraging. Do you have, obviously this is the first half of of 1 year. Based on your experience, do you have any reason to believe that the second half won't be similarly shaped to the first half?
I probably should say we should wait for the data. Because that would be the right answer to the question. But no, I don't believe that the data will dramatically change in either way. I think we kind of flatline out at this moment in time. There is, however, a lot of work going on in terms of removing agency staff and transferring those over into those permanent posts. So obviously that will help support some of the data that you've got in front of you. I mean, generally, Q3s and Q4s tend to be slower in terms of turnover because you've got Christmas in there and Easter, and people don't advertise maybe in quite the same way, so we wouldn't lose staff. But without seeing the data, I wouldn't like to say.
That's great. Thank you. I had a question on section 7. Do you want to take that now or do you want to wait?
Shall we do talent attraction next?
Okay.
Everybody's questions? Yeah.
So you were going to answer the question in the website, jobs or careers.
Can I cover that in talent attraction? Is that my microphone back on? So the next section, section 7, is around talent attraction. We have a new team in HR called Talent Attraction, and that will cover things like strategic talent pooling as well as the recruitment process. So what you've got in front of you is data around adverts that we advertised in the first 2 quarters of the year. And I would say that's probably around the same in terms of the next 2 quarters. That's what we're seeing, a replication of that. So when we talk about kind of 25 adverts out at any one time, that's what we've advertised in a 6-month period. We have 2 talent attraction officer we've got posts in our team, and they started in November 2022. They were brought in to help review the recruitment process, to look at removing waste, digitalising as much as possible. We now have CVs instead of application forms, although people can still use application forms if they want to. So there's been a lot of work around kind of simplifying that process, listening to candidates around what they want, listening to managers, and improving that candidate experience. We have moved a lot of staff over from agency, and this data clearly is out of date now, but that progress continues in terms of that success with really targeting agency staff that want to come and work for us and asking them whether they want to come and work for us, and moving those over. So that's been a real positive in the year. We've got an early careers business partner that's maintaining the apprenticeship route. We've always had a good intake of apprenticeships, and that continues, and we use our levy in a wide variety of different ways. So that's also really good. We have a graduate now in the organisation from the National Careers Graduate Scheme, and we'll look at expanding our graduate offer with those links with other education establishments. So lots of work experience. COVID hit us quite hard in terms of that ability to do work experience. So lots of activity around supporting our kind of early careers and getting people to want to come and work for us as an organisation. And then employee value proposition, there was a survey done. As well as the survey, there was feedback sessions with staff around why people like working for us, why people want to come and work for us, why they stay here, etc. And that has been really positive in terms of the outputs that we saw. So I can't share all of that data with all of you at this moment in time, but really positive in terms of people like working for the organisation. They stay here because they want to make a difference to their local community. They want to be developed more. So there's more opportunity to look at career pathways and those careers that we talked about rather than jobs. So we're looking at our websites, we're looking at our employee value proposition being digitalised, making it look a bit smarter, whizzier, more attractive, listening to our potential candidates. And that's a piece of work that's continuing to happen over this coming year. So there's lots to be done around recruitment, employment attraction, but that's been really positive in the last 12 months and continues in the next 12 months. So it will be jobs, careers. Yeah, we are looking at all of that going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Raj.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 questions really, but I'll make it quick. Thank you for the update in terms of graduate. I was looking at that part, but you mentioned just 1 graduate. I don't think but it's a good start, but that's not enough, because I'm looking for this section to highlight some reach out to colleges and universities and even to school leavers to find out like how those children can be incorporated into the council career aspiration path, because graduate scheme is one such good scheme where they can find that career, and particularly the local schools can feed into. right? Number one, and we can promote that. The other question I have is in terms of again, going into the job spec or the jobs available, referral is a great tool, great way to kind of find good candidates. I'm not able to find how the jobs listed out there to refer the internal employees or people who know about these jobs can refer people from, because instead of relying on agencies to find the best suit, referral ones and rewarding referrals, successful referrals are hires. It's a good way to hire more people because friends and families will be encouraged to work. And I can't find that in the link if you can encourage that one. So that's the two things.
We do have a referral scheme. So that only came in April 23. So that has been promoted internally. But if you can't find it, then that's something we need to have a look at to share that more.
Just the feedback I'm giving, like if I click any job, there should be an option to say refer a candidate in that one. Say instead of sending the link to someone to apply for the job, just refer. And if an internal employee refers to it, then HR's hiring managers can get the kind of knows like, oh, someone from inside has referred this candidate. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's we can take that on certainly in terms of sharing that. Graduates, we have one graduate from the national scheme. We do go and have conversations with universities. So we do get graduates in through other routes, but that was the first graduate that we've been successful in getting from the national scheme, which, it's quite hard to get on that path and actually get a graduate from there because lots of people apply, lots of councils apply. So we've been quite successful in that. T-levels, we do T-levels with the local colleges, quite a new scheme, T-levels, but we've had quite a few T-level work experience placements in the organisation, looking at doing interns. Apprenticeships definitely is our success in effect, but we go out to schools, we do mock interviews, we help with CVs. So all of that kind of connectivity, we have been doing that really well as an organisation, and that will continue to happen. So yeah, there's lots there, but there's lots more that we could still kind of do.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
I'd like to give you an assurance that we've looked at this really carefully. It's my background, and I've sat with Paula, Gabrielle, and said, how do we improve the way that we attract people to the authority? The referral scheme is potentially too much of a well-kept secret. We need to promote it heavily. I like the idea of careers rather than jobs. In fact, I go further. The button I would have on my recruitment websites would be, we are hiring. And I click here, that's me. So give us some time to get this right. Right now, Paula and her HR team, a lot of them are absolutely snowed under with moving our HR payroll system to a new system. That should, Paula, maybe be out the way in a couple of months, and we can get back to this. Because we want to end up with a talent attraction system. So when somebody applies here, we can keep their details for a period of time and reach out to them proactively if another role comes forward and we say, Mr. Armitage, you applied, you weren't quite successful then, but would you like to apply again? There's some tremendous stuff we can do. We're on the start of this journey. I'm trying to give you an assurance that we mean business, really. We started to use agencies for permanent hires. Now, you'll pay maybe 15% of the annual salary. The annual salary is £40,000. That's a £6,000 fee. But you might be saving 30, 40, £50,000 a year on an agency worker. So the £6,000 in my example pays you back by quite a lot on that return of investment. And we've begun to start doing that, haven't we? In isolated cases, particularly social care, we've got to do planning engineers. These are difficult skills and people to attract. So I suppose I'm trying to give you some assurance that all of the things you're saying are being picked up, not least because that's my subject matter expertise. And then finally, the employee value proposition is simply to say, why do people want to work here? Why do people stay here? And can we then take that to market and on our website and say, look at all these happy people Smile, Karen. I hope you're one of them. And we say, look, why don't you want to come and work for us? Because we are a nice organisation to work for, the EVP. That's a long-winded way, Chairman, of saying all of these things we're grasping. We really are.
Thanks very much. Councillor Paul.
Thank you very much, Chair. About 10 years ago, I was sat listening to Google talk about these crazy new things that were coming through called millennials. And the millennial way of working was very, very different, and businesses had to be ready to adapt. And it was no longer about how much money you get paid. It was about what perks you get. And as I read your report, and as I've been flicking through some of the job specs online, one of the things that stands out to me is that we don't actually say what it is that we do and what we offer other than holidays. So then if our package, if I was to go back into corporate and if I was to pick up an offer, there would at least be 6 or 7 pages about the value adds for working for that company, and not just you get this many days holiday. It'll be, this is the access to mental health, your employee benefit scheme subscribes you to, a private medical insurance that covers you and anyone else, but anyone else in your family can call this number for immediate mental health crises. And it is much more than just a job. It is almost like a way of life. And if you are bought into that way of life, it then becomes part of you and who you are. And if we've got members of staff that are here for 8 years, then they're obviously happy in what it is that they do. But I think if we're going to be attracting in some new talent from grassroots, I think this is going to be about what it is that we offer as well. And I would encourage you to think of that as well, because I think that leans very nicely to Anthony's piece there about, referring and being able to share roles of like-minded people with like-minded people, because you will find that there are little pools of people who work very well in social care, who have that aptitude, people who want to work in SEN. There will be very niche groups of people and they will share jobs between them. So that would be my statement, my observation. Thanks, Paula.
So, we've just started using LinkedIn. So we've purchased a different aspect of LinkedIn, which in terms of social worker, that's helpful because we encourage managers, employees to share adverts, comments, if you like, in terms of coming to work for us. So it will be quite interesting to see what feedback we get in terms of whether that helps our recruitment rate. But it's a bit too early because we've only just started using that. In terms of benefits, we do normally advertise our benefits. So I'm surprised that you can't find them, but I will go away and have a look and see, because we actually have a lot of benefits in terms of what we offer. So if that isn't easily seen, then that's something I need to have a look at. So I will take that away and have a look at that. But we do advertise a lot of our benefits.
Thank you. I've got a very quick question. On section 7B, you mentioned the candidate survey, looking at the way that candidate experience has changed and improved. Do you plan to, publish those results at some point in the future? Because it seems that we've seen a real improvement, and it'd be great to see what's worked well.
I think we'll leave that with Paula, but the candidate experience is vital. And we've got a lot of work to do on that in surveying candidates, say what was good about the process, what wasn't good about the process. I don't know if Paula agrees with me, but when we're capturing who has applied through a talent acquisition system, I know you saw a good one the other day, Paula, you were really quite excited about it. Then you're starting to see what's working, what's not working. But at the moment, I suppose, as you get that information, you don't really have anywhere to store it. So until we can't analyse and improve it. Now, I'm hoping later this year, that talent acquisition system, Taleo was a good one. You could keep your candidates there and you could, go in and establish what was good about the process. We get to that, we gather the data, we refine. We're on the journey. Paula, have I stolen your thunder or?
No. So I think in terms of that, it was a survey done in confidence, in effect. So it wouldn't be data that we could publish because there was, it was surveying a few candidates that applied for roles. So it wouldn't be something we could publish going forward. But I think in terms of proving our feedback, we do need to, so we ask managers for feedback in terms of the process and how they find it. So we do what we call those smiley face sheets in effect. But I do think we need to do more around candidates and asking them for their feedback in terms of the process. It's not all about managers. It's not all about people leaving the organisation. It's also about people coming into the organisation, how they find it, you know, because it should be a more personalised route. You know, what one person wants might be different to what somebody else wants. What I will say is actually the induction. So we've got an induction programme, and the feedback around induction was really positive. It is something we want to look at improving, because we're always looking at improving. But that level of feedback we can't share because it was kind of meant to be confidential, because it was individuals that were surveyed in effect. So.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
But we can aggregate it. The more we get, we can aggregate it and show trends. Recruitment is everybody's responsibility, and we've got to get that through the organisation. So if you're a manager, you're running a section, you've got vacancies, every month you should be sitting down and saying, what have we done this month to fill those vacancies? And Paul has just given a good indication. We're starting to put them on LinkedIn. It's the manager's responsibility as well as HR's. You don't just give the role to HR and say, well, that's it, they'll find me people. You've got to own that as well as a manager. And we've got to roll that out across the organisation.
Thank you. I don't think there's any more questions. Would you please carry on?
Okay, so performance management is section 8. So this is performance management encompasses disciplinaries, grievances, capability, whistleblowing, sickness absence, ill health retirement, reasonable adjustments, and then kind of restructures, TUPEs, redundancies, gives you some high level data. It doesn't include schools. We do give advice to schools, but this is for our corporate employees, and what you've got is a variety of different assets of data. So you've got tables that show informal versus formal cases, and they are aggregated on the basis of what's incorporated into performance management. You will see that from a positive perspective, casework does seem to be reducing. We are seeing more informal over formal cases, which is also positive in terms of managers actually then managing those processes going forward. And then if you move on to table 3, this is around sickness absence. So you've got the cases around disciplinary, grievance, sickness absence, ill health, retirement and probation. Unfortunately, the copy I've printed out is in black and white, so I can't tell which colour's which. But all kind of downward trending, which is also positive. And then you've got data around sickness absence, which again is kind of plateauing at this time of year. I would expect it would be higher in Q3, Q4. Sickness absence generally is higher over the winter when you see the coughs, colds, those kind of things. And of course, post-COVID, we are seeing more illnesses coming out where people are mixing more. So we're seeing children, it's in the news, where they're getting kind of more coughs and colds and that kind of thing. And of course, that spreads to their parents who are then bringing that in. But generally, sickness absence it's nationally about that level. And in conversation with our partner organisations in Berkshire, we're about equivalent to them in terms of sickness absence data. We are always seeing higher amounts of sickness absence in relation to stress and musculoskeletal. Again, that's common in terms of the national picture. So you've got breakdowns of days lost by employees and by directorates, and then you've got information around short-term versus long-term absence, reasons for absence, and then just really what support we offer our employees in relation to sickness absence. We have an employee wellbeing business partner, we have wellbeing initiatives, we have mental health first aiders, we have EAP schemes that employee access schemes that people can get counselling support from, and that's free, so they can do that directly. They don't have to go through their line manager to get that. and lots of kind of internal support for people in the organisation. We've got lots of stress management guidance and support on our intranet pages, and our employee wellbeing business partner goes out and does talks to our managers and encourages them to have conversations about employee wellbeing. It's in the one-to-one form, so we encourage managers to have those conversations with their employees as well. So there's lots of support that is being put in place for our employees. Of course, you know, we can do more. We can always try and do more, and we, you know, if we've got feedback, then we'll look to doing that more as well. Comparison to other organisations, if you look at section 8 in the latter parts of that, it gives you some information about ONS, although frustratingly, it's always a year behind, at least in terms of the data that they publish. So it's never quite as up to date as we'd like it to be. We are seeing NHS waiting lists being longer, which is clearly having an impact on some of the reasons that some staff are off work, you know, waiting for operations, waiting for support through the NHS. So there's a lot of information in that section of the report. Hopefully, you'll probably have some questions now.
Councillor Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Paula, I noticed in your document, which is incredibly comprehensive, so thank you, there is a comment saying 8 to 12, the stress, depression and mental health related absence sits at 36.2%, which is up from 24.1 in the previous year. I'd be interested to understand if there's any sort of trending with that, or if there's any sort of lead up to the events that we would be able to understand the increase, because that's not just a small increase, that's an extra third, 50% on last year.
Yeah, so no reason. I mean, COVID, the reasons for COVID were brought into, they were excluded originally for sickness absence reporting. So we are seeing, because COVID is now being reported under coughs, cold, etc., we are seeing related illnesses, if you like, in relation to COVID and long COVID and that kind of, so that would probably answer some of that query. We are seeing more people who are getting frustrated because of the NHS waiting list and not getting that level of support that perhaps quicker they would have had that level of support. So, you know, they perhaps would have been supported and not gone off with stress, etc. previously. So some of that is outside of our control, in effect. I mean, we are nationally equivalent to other organisations. This is what ONS and CIPD are telling us in relation to sickness absence, that stress levels are going up post-COVID. It could be cost of living related. It could be many reasons that are not necessarily work related. You know, this talks about stress, not necessarily work related stress. We don't necessarily have all the reasons why. It's something we could talk to people about if we felt that was needed. But at this moment in time, I think it's a multitude of different reasons, but it's the national picture. That's what we're being told, that we are not alone in terms of those figures going up.
Thank you, Paula.
Any other questions on that? Oh, Councillor Paul again.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I might let someone else chime in. The other thing that I noticed in your report, Paula, is that we are a AFAB heavy organisation that's assigned female at birth. 77.3%. I also noticed in your report that there's nothing in here supporting women going through menopause. Sorry, AFAB people experiencing menopause, which I believe in the coming months organisations are required to make suitable adjustments. What's our preparation on that, please?
We have got a menopause support group in the organisation. We've got a menopause policy in the organisation. We have reasonable adjustments procedure, and we do provide support. So Unison also have menopause cafes that support staff, and we encourage men to go as well as women. It's not just open to women, so that you know, anybody is welcome to go to those sessions. So our employee wellbeing business partner also provides guidance. There's information on our intranet to support people. So we are supporting people with that aspect and conversations. We've got a women's network in our organisation. Again, men are encouraged to go just as much as women. So, you know, it's to support women with, I guess, things that perhaps impact more on women, but like I say, men are open to go to those. And so those types of discussions take place quite openly in those areas as well. So I think we provide support. Clearly the policy also needs to be updated for this year. We have a reasonable adjustments budget that we utilise to support people. I mean, some of the things are out of our control in terms of the way the building is set up, in terms of not being able to open windows and things like that for those individuals, but fans readily available in the building, you know, that kind of thing. But I think we have support in our organisation for women going through peri and menopausal effects.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Chair.
No other questions on section 8. Paula, would you be kind enough to look through section 9, please?
Let's put this on. So corporate training. So we do report corporate training. So we have corporate indicators. We call them corporate health indicators for mandatory and non-mandatory training. We are just about to move to a new e-learning solution, which offers us a lot more in terms of learning and training. That isn't the only route. So we do blended approaches for learning. So we do classroom sessions, we do over Teams sessions as well. We do generally an annual training needs analysis. So we try to understand what type of training people need and target our corporate training budget in relation to those areas. But lots more training, I think, than when we did during COVID. I mean, there are still things that we need to do. And of course, like I say, with more kind of opportunity coming forward with our new LMS system, probably reviewing the training for managers. So at the moment, we don't have a formal managers induction program, and that's something that's been on the agenda to look at going forward. So we support managers using more of our subject matter experts in-house. So we do some of that with health and safety, for example, who run sessions on stress awareness, VDU assessments, that kind of thing. So there's lots of in-house subject matter experts. Finance would be the other one, governance that we're looking at. So there's lots of opportunity to use those people that already have that knowledge to share that across the organisation. But the take-up is very good. You know, people do training and like to do training. We have a specific area in children's and adult social care, so they have their own training arrangement. That's not something that we get involved with centrally. We are in the process of reviewing our appraisal and our one-to-one document, and we will be looking at making sure that people have better PDPs, so personal development plans on an annual basis that are more targeted in terms of personal career development as well as the broader corporate training aspects. So it's a brief update. There's no data in here, something that we will look to bring back in the next 12 months when we've got our new LMS in place. Questions?
Councillor Poole.
Thank you, Chair. I hear you when you say about the training, because training is always something that is, people go into a job, they like to be nurtured and developed and maybe go on to another job internally as well. From our conversation this evening, we tend to recruit a lot of people, and most of the roles will then be managed or have some sort of supervision by a supervisor. And it's a very natural career progression to go from doing a job to then running a team, doing the job that you were doing. And then I was somewhat shocked to hear you say that you don't actually have a formal training program for managers. Now, one of the things, as I know myself as a manager and former team leader, it's the personnel training, and it's the knowing how to manage difficult situations that can often make or break a team. So I'd like to ask you for your thoughts and feedback about when that program is going to be there and whether or not it's something that you may look to bring in specialist skills and resources from outside in order to deliver that training, as well as just doing something in supporting internal growth and support of the team. Excuse me.
So we have training for managers. It's just not collated in a formal training program for managers. So I'll give you some examples. So stress awareness training for managers, setting objectives training for managers. So there's lots of training. It's just not coordinated as a manager's induction or a manager's training program per se. And that's what we want to do. We want to bring all of that together into one space to say, as a manager, this is also what you're expected to over and above the mandatory training that is already in there. So like I say, it's there is training there. It's just not marketed, if you like, in terms of a formal training program for managers. It's just spread out over our e-learning program, and there's lots of availability for people to do that. So it is there to hopefully allay your fears, and managers do a lot of training. Like I say, stress awareness, the people manager side of it. So I'm looking at Karen now. So Karen only started in August last year. There has been some ad hoc training since COVID, where we've done sickness absence training or guidance education, if you like. So there's lots of information on our intranet about managers' guidance. What there hasn't been since COVID is education sessions for managers in terms of how to manage sickness absence. And that's something that Karen has been putting together, programs of activity. So there's plans in place to do some of that as well, whether that's managing capability, grievances, etc. All of that, investigations. There is a plan to do that. Karen only started in August, so need a bit of time to pull all of that together.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
I think it's good to hear that there is training for managers. I think we've got to make sure also, Paula, through you, Chair, that there is training opportunities for them in the softer skills, and stress awareness is one, but recognition that's coming through from, I think, even the peer review team, about recognising not just in the pay packet, but in the softer skills of saying, well done, that was a job well done. And even sometimes if iTrent goes in, I've already said to the chief executive, take the team out for a bit of lunch, let them enjoy the achievement. And those softer things can mean an awful lot in terms of retaining staff. My question through you, Chair, is at an appraisal, we'll normally talk to an individual about their training needs. Are you comfortable that will be captured through your training and certainly the LMS that you're looking to put in later? So, you're bringing that in and responding properly and positively to that through the appraisal process, please.
So that there is already a personal development plan as part of the current appraisal. We don't think it's robust enough, and therefore there will be a separate document that can be utilised throughout the whole of somebody's year for that particular appraisal. So what we call it, we don't know yet, but it will be a personal development plan that people can refer to on a more regular basis. In terms of our new system, we are getting a module called performance management. So at the moment, all we collate is when people have their meetings. We don't actually have the data, so we don't know what objectives are being set. We don't know what learning opportunities people want in their careers, and that will hopefully all be captured in the new system going forward, which will then inform our training needs analysis more, so that we can make sure with that training it's more focused. So we know quite quickly if 10 people want to do Prince 2 training in relation to project management, we would have that detail. That isn't something we have readily at our fingertips. It doesn't mean people don't have their personal development plans put together. It means we don't have access to that centralised data, and therefore it makes it much harder for us to target that type of training. That answers the question.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, thank you very much for introducing that report. I'd like to move the agenda on to item 6, the statutory pay policy, CC 4491. Paula, could I ask you again to introduce this report, please?
Apologies. I'm going to briefly introduce paper, and then I am going to hand over to Olympia just to perhaps pass a few comments, because Olympia is the one that's written the paper and knows this in a bit more detail. So annually, we are required to produce a statutory pay policy. It's the statutory pay policy from the 1st of April this year, so 2024. It lasts for the entirety of the year. It's based on data previously, the previous 12 months. It's required legally, like I said, under Section 38 of the Localism Act 2011. The paper or the policy will go to full council on the 26th of March to be finally signed off. So this is the route it goes through. It's been to corporate board, it's been to ops board, it's now coming to personnel committee, and it will then make its way, if agreed, to full council on the 26th of March, in readiness for it to be published on the 1st of April on our website, which is our statutory requirement. Hopefully you've read the paper. There's quite a lot of detail here about pay and allowances, which is what the paper is there to do. I'm going to just let you ask questions and possibly hand over to Olympia in terms of some of those questions as the subject matter expert.
Councillor Amatraj.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on one important subject. I think it may not be suited for this organization, bonuses. First, can I point out, like, if I may, like, I think there is a discrepancy there. It says in section 4.5 in the report, it says chief officer remuneration includes salary and bonuses. So that implies that bonuses are included, but in page number 32, it says the council does not operate a separate bonus scheme for its chief officers. So maybe it may be a overlook or a kind of a, but that's a trivial one. What I'm trying to point out is, yes, we are not a profit organization. We are not here to make money. We are an organization for the people. So bonuses is not applicable. But there is something of which I was looking at the report was some kind of a reward scheme. There is no mention of this. What I mean by reward scheme is that like certain kind of applause for employees, high fives, like let's say, like you've done a good job, and that kind of accumulates to kind of a momentary award to say, I'm just giving an example of my organization to say like, okay, councillors reach out to officers and they've done a good job. There is no other way to say to them like, oh, you've done a good job other than emailing them. So there is a good way of telling them, or public can tell them like, this officer helped me internally. They could have been helping people out. So it's kind of a reward scheme, not a big amount, but if you, I'm just asking through Chair, is there a scheme to encourage employees to go beyond and kind of rewarded for their good work?
So the statutory pay policy is about pay and allowances. It isn't about recognition. So there is a framework that we have to produce this data in this form as part of our, and every council has to do this. So that's why it's in the form it's in. That's why we don't talk about recognition or reward in a different way, because it is about pay and allowances. We don't have bonuses for our senior managers. We do have statutory pay allowances for our statutory officers. So, you know, 151, MO and head of pay service. So there are allowances in effect. But the terminology is terminology because it could encapsulate bonuses. We don't have bonuses. Other councils might have bonuses. So it's probably misleading in terms of the way it's worded, but yeah, we don't have bonuses, but other councils might. That's their choice to do that. But yeah, it's in answer to your question about recognition, this isn't the place that we would put that level of detail because we have to publish it in the form that it's given to us. We do have different arrangements, if you like, in terms of recognition. It is something we want to do more of going forward and review our recognition approach, whether formally, informally, but that isn't really something that we would put in this paper.
Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, we are statutorily insisted by central government. We have a statutory pay policy. It's healthy to do that. My question would be, can you give us a little bit more detail on the methodology? I'm used to Hay pay scales, guiding us. Have we used that? Do we use a different pay scale? Where do we get our base raw data from? Obviously, we take last year's, we're going to update it. Give us a little bit more about how we came to where we are, please.
Well, I can talk to you about the pay scales. So we are on what's called local pay. So you have national pay scales in local government. We're not on national pay scales as some councils are, which is one pay scheme, pay structure for all councils that it applies to. This is a West Berks pay scale. We use the National Pay Award. So we wait for the National Pay Award to be negotiated, and then we apply that National Pay Award when they eventually decide to implement it, which this year was December and backdated to April. So we have to wait for the National Pay Award to be agreed. Therefore, the pay scale that you have in Appendix 1 is the pay scale that we have in West Berks. In terms of determining what grades of posts are, so what you've got in there is grades B right up to Chief Executive. They are determined by Hay job evaluation. So Hay job evaluation determines the grade. The pay for that grade is then determined by the pay scale. And that's what you've got in Appendix 1. Is that what you wanted to know, Jeff?
That is helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Paula, Karen, and Olympia, a bit of a question here for you. I understand that we have our own pay scale, and that's how we attribute our salaries to our team. Curious to understand your perspective on how the roles that we have align with other neighbouring unitary authorities and how those teams are paid. The reason I ask is that I'm aware of some individuals who work within the ESC, Environmental Social Care Services, where simply hopping over the border to Reading or Wokingham means that they can be eligible for somewhere between a £5,000 and £7,000 pay rise. And just wondering how those councils are funded and how they are structured and how we may be able to adapt our pay schemes so that we can pay our staff the same money so we can attract the same talent and retain the same talent.
It's not a simple answer. I mean, we do talk to the other local authorities in terms of hard to fill roles. So we would be doing some benchmarking in relation to things like social workers, etc. We don't do that with all of the roles that we've got on our pay structure. Not all roles are hard to fill. I wouldn't say we were disparate in many of our job roles that we do have those conversations with, especially social workers. So if there are examples of hard to fill, what we tend to do is look at the pay that other organisations are offering and then look at whether job evaluation, whether the job description needs reviewing, whether job evaluation needs redoing, and therefore whether the grade would change as a result of that. We can't simply apply a different amount of money to a pay scale because of course that impacts on all the jobs within that pay structure. Then it has to be through job evaluation, through the grade of the post, and then looking at whether the grade is correct in the first instance, maybe changing the job role and having a look at that. We do have a market supplement policy. So where we have specifically hard to fill roles, then we would look at, if we had advertised it a couple of times and we couldn't fill it, we would look at using a market supplement policy, which is what we've used in our children's services. We actually don't have many other market supplements across the organisation. Our recruitment activity is pretty good. We actually have a really good amount of candidates that are starting to come forward, and whether that's the job market changing. The hard to fill areas we have tend to be in social work areas, educational psychologists, engineers. It's national. That's a national problem. And therefore, I'm not sure we can fix it by just having conversations with other organisations and looking at the salaries of those. I think it's more than that. It's looking at development. It's looking at career development, personal opportunities, all the benefits that go with it. It's that whole package, if you like, for our talent. And pay hasn't necessarily come up in some of the conversations that we've been made aware of, but we do look at it if we have hard to fill roles, would be the short answer to your question.
I have a quick question, if I may. You said that this is published each year. Currently on the website, we only had the statutory pay policy for 2022, not for 2023. Do you know why that is? And when will it be published after? Presumably straight away after the council approves it on the 26th of March.
It should be there, so it's probably hiding somewhere.
Okay, so from the council management structure webpage, it links to the pay policy 2022, and I've today searched a couple of times for pay policy, statutory pay policy, etc., and can't find it.
It might be because it's published with the budget papers. So it could be within the budget papers. So each year the statutory pay policy goes to council and it gets put in with the budget papers. So it could be that it's sitting within the budget papers.
Sorry, this is the last year's 2023 that I was
Yeah.
trying to find.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I will have a look. I'll have a look when I go back, but it could be that it's sitting within the budget papers for last year.
Is the is it, because I noticed I read the 2022 one, it doesn't include Appendix 1 with the salary scales in there. Is the intention to publish it with Appendix 1 present?
Well, we should be withdrawing them. So once the new one's published, then the old one should be taken down. So we wouldn't normally revise what was up there. I suspect that was related to the pay award being very late. So there was 1 year, I think it was that year, where the pay award was incredibly late. So we actually had to do the statutory pay policy without the pay award added to it. And that was made clear in the paper that we didn't have the new pay award agreed, and therefore that would be published once the pay award had been agreed. So that's why that structure is missing, because we didn't have the pay award. I can't remember the date it was agreed, but it was late, and that's why the statutory pay policy didn't have the updated pay scales in it, because we had 2 years where it had the same pay scale structure in it.
So I wasn't clear. Is that, so what you're saying is that the 2024 one will be published, when it's published, it will be published with Appendix 1 attached to it?
Yes,
Fantastic, thank you.
yes.
Well, I see there are no other questions, so thank you very much for the team for fielding our questions on that. That brings us to item 7 on the agenda, which is the next meeting of this committee.
Sorry, Chair. Do we need to approve the recommendation, please, Stephen, on the statutory pay policy?
I understand that it's reports for information, and information only will be adopted and approved by the council on the 26th of March.
Yeah, I get that. I just wonder if we need to note that we've seen it, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, yeah, so it can be noted and then recommended it proceeds to council.
Right. I think that's the proposal I would make, sir.
Okay, so do we vote on that?
I think it would be worthwhile. Do you need a seconder? Yeah, just vote that we are
Yeah.
not only noting it, we're recommending
noting
it
it,
to
we're
full
recommending it.
council. Just so there's a record that we have received it, challenged it, and are putting it forward for recommendation.
So then, item 7. The next meeting of this committee will take place on the 2nd of July 2024.
Chairman, do you know where you'll be then?
I will be here in this.
Fabulous.
Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Because you could always change the date.
I believe that the 2nd of July will be fine at the moment. We will see. Thank you very much. So that concludes the business tonight. I'd like to thank all of the officers for their time this evening, for helping us with the probing questions. I'd like to thank my colleagues on the committee for trying to shine light on the workings of the personnel team within West Berkshire Council. And thank you very much. That concludes the meeting.
Well done.